Go ahead, Evelina, 13. The top. Yes. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Happy Hanukkah and a good Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh means the beginning of the new month. The Parsha facts. This week's Torah portion of Parshat Vayigash, and it's in the book of Bereshit, Genesis, chapter 44, verse 12 through chapter 47, verse 27. It's found in the Art Scroll Chumash, page 250 through 267, 106 verses. There are no commandments in the Torah in this week's portion. Okay, let's give a little backdrop for those who recall the storyline the past few weeks. Yosef was figuratively and literally sold down the river, became a slave there, was falsely accused, put into jail, got out of jail by interpreting Pharaoh's dreams, and warned him of impending famine after 7 years of plenty, and was given the position to be in charge of that, and the hunger went up to the land of Canaan. Yaakov sent down the tribes, 10 out of the 11. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sent them down to purchase the food. Yosef, they don't recognize Yosef, but Yosef recognizes them. He accuses them of being spies, and eventually he says, well, if you want to prove it, you have to bring the younger brother down. And part of Yosef's motivation for this was to make the prophetic dreams that he had come true. And the first one was where the tribes bowed down to him. That's the sheaves of the bushels of wheat bowed down to him. So he needed Binyamin down. He got Binyamin down, and then he had his workers hide his silver goblet in Binyamin's sack, and he tells them, okay, and they couldn't believe that it was taken, and they didn't think that they would, but they said at the end of last week's portion, we'll all be slaves. And he said, no, only Binyamin has to stay behind, and you guys can go. You're free to go. And this is part of the test to see if, in fact, what they will do in defense of Binyamin, or will they let him stay there. So Vayigash begins with Yehuda approaching Yosef and pleading his case. He recaps what happened, the entire story. They're being accused of spies, and he says, bring down Binyamin, and how beloved Binyamin is to their father Yaakov. If you recall, that was the last son he had, as far as he knew, from his beloved wife Rachel. And Yehuda is the one who steps forward. Why is Yehuda stepping forward? Because he's keeping his word. He promised Yaakov that he would be in charge. He would make sure that Binyamin would return. And he's keeping his word. And he says, if I don't bring him back, I will give up this world and the world to come. The world to come means the world of the soul. We are all physical beings that will live on this world, hopefully happily and healthily till 120 years, but eventually we all pass, and our soul is eternal, and that lives on, and we need to think about the eternity of the soul. And the eternity of the soul is an amazing thing, because, you may like donuts on Hanukkah, though someone sent me something cute and said, do not think that donuts are a prescription. You're not required to take 2 a day for 8 days. All right? But whatever physical pleasure we may have in this world, that can be very delightful, but it ends. If you take a lot of donuts every day, you don't want to eat donuts anymore, right? So everything has its limits. But spiritual pleasure, that's endless, and that's what eternity is all about. And we need to think about the world to come and eternity, and ultimately the limitless pleasure that comes with that. So Yehuda does what he's supposed to do, and Yehuda offers to stay in Binyamin's place. I'm stronger, I'm more capable. I'll be a better slave than Binyamin is. So let Binyamin go back to his father and I'll stay down, which was very virtuous of him, self-sacrifice and keeping his word. So Yosef is going to talk to them, and he's going to say something shocking to them, but he asks everybody first to leave the room, which was a little bit of a dangerous move on his part because he's outnumbered. He didn't have his guards with him, but he wanted to make sure he doesn't embarrass his brothers. And because he's going to reveal that he's Yosef, their brother, that they sold him down, and he doesn't want anyone else to hear that. And he's trying to save the embarrassment. The story about a rabbi there was the man who's in charge of the synagogue, who one of his jobs was to heat the synagogue before everybody comes. And heating the synagogue was not like today, you push the button and the heat goes on. It was getting the firewood and putting it into the oven to heat the oven. And he wasn't so good at getting there on time. So the rabbi would go there many times early without saying anything to anybody. And he would heat the oven so that by the time the congregation came, the synagogue was warmer. And one day, the guy in charge, who had the job, the officer in charge of doing this, sees someone's in the oven. And he says, "Hey, what are you doing over there?" And starts whacking him. And the rabbi did not pick his head out of the oven and scorched his beard because he didn't want to embarrass the person in charge, to see that it was the rabbi who was actually doing his job, and B, that he was whacking. So the concept of being careful not to embarrass somebody is something that we all need to work on, because sometimes we just say things. And Yosef says the infamous words, "Ani Yosef ha'od avichai." I am Yosef. Is our father still alive? Is my father still alive? And what's the tribe's reaction? Total shock. They're speechless. They have nothing to say. They go back and they can't believe it. And the Gemara, the Talmud, brings a story from in Chagiga Daf Daled, page 4a, that Rabbi Eliezer cried when he read this verse. Why did he cry? He says, listen, he says, if a man chastises somebody and they couldn't speak, when we have to meet our Creator and he chastises us, how much harder will it be? We won't be able to speak. Here was the youngest brother, and he says, "I'm Yosef," and they're so embarrassed and shocked they can't believe their eyes and ears. And excuse me, battery is low. I don't know why. It's plugged in. Excuse me. Okay, that should be better. And he says, if they were ashamed from their youngest brother and so shocked, what will we be like after 120 years when we meet our Maker? And God says, hey, how come you didn't do the A, B, C, and D? Or why did you do Z, X, Y? And we're just going to be... So the great Rabbi Eliezer cried when he read this verse to learn an important lesson about thinking about that one day we all have a meeting with the Almighty to look at what we did in our lives and what we didn't do. The Chavetz Chaim has a very powerful answer point that he makes on this verse. Imagine the years that went on with Yosef. And let's go back a little bit. The Shvatim, the tribes, didn't understand his behavior. He was talking about dreams and he was being superior to them. They didn't understand. They didn't get it. They planned on killing him. They didn't. They put him in the pit. They took him out. They sold him down the river. And he was gone. And Yaakov is mourning and never getting over it. And then they come down to Egypt, and this man is hassling them with the food and the spies and accusations and jail and this and that. They don't get the whole thing. And all of a sudden, Yosef says 2 words, and all the answers fall into place. What does he say? I'm Yosef. And then they get it. They get Yosef's dreams are really not just silly dreams, they're prophetic. Yaakov mourning because he saw greatness in Yosef and expected him to live. And they had the ultimate clarity from those 2 words. Says the Chavetz Chaim, at the end of days, God will say, I am God. And all the questions about the Holocaust and October 7th and the exile and personal issues and the pain and the loss and all that, everything will be clarified. You had a question, Ava?
Well, there is possible. It's still the brothers when they go bury Yitzhak back in Yaakov back in the tomb, and they come back. They're scared of Yosef still, no?
Yeah, that's at the end of Vayechi. You're talking about 2 weeks ahead. Yeah, they still are worried because at the same time Yaakov's not there, so maybe Yosef is still resenting them. That's going to be in 2 weeks. We'll deal with it. But at the same time, they understood everything that happened. Everything came, the whole picture came into place. And when God will, in the end of the day, say, I am God, we will also have more clarity. So why did we have such a hard time when we're going through a hard time?
Maybe because we forget that it's meant to teach us a lesson that Hashem is there with us, and we're just forgetting that.
Very well said. We forget that sometimes there's a lesson for us to be learning in it, and that God is really with us. Good. And the other thing is, imagine going to the movie theater in the middle of a movie. I'm not recommending it, but imagine you did. And you see something happen. Oh, why is that happening? You missed out the first part. You didn't know what happened. Oh, I can't stay now. I'm going to leave. Well, then you're going to miss the ending part. We are looking at snippets of life while we're in the snippet, and we don't realize that there's a background and there's a future, and we're missing part of the part of the story, and we don't know the future, and we don't know the past, so. But Yosef is very gracious and warm to them and understanding. And he says, we're all part of a divine plan. There's a Yiddish word for that I'm going to teach. It's called bashert. Bashert means meant to be. It was meant to be. I'll tell you a sad story of that and a good story of that. There was a fellow who got sick and they did an MRI and they poo-pooed his sickness, and ultimately it was a very bad sickness. And for some reason, they missed it on the MRI, and it was openly there. They saw it, but they just didn't see it. And he said, he was comforted by that. He said, look, it's bad news, but I get strength because it wasn't meant to be. It was blatantly on the MRI. They should have seen it. The doctor should have caught it. But he didn't. So I guess it was meant to be that it shouldn't be caught. So it's a sad story, but he had a good attitude about it because he understood that it doesn't make any sense. They took the test and they didn't see it. And then there's somebody who I know personally who someone called up the mother to suggest a young lady for this young man. And the first name of the young lady was Sprinza, which is not a very common name. It's probably named after a great-grandmother or something. And it's not like it's just not such a great name. There are a lot of more beautiful names, Sprinza. And the girl was from Australia. So Sprinza from Australia, the mother said, I don't know, doesn't sound so interesting to us. A match for my son from so far away, and the name is a little funny to me. I don't know. So she says she calls her son and she discusses it with him, and he says, "Yeah, no, we have some other possibilities of young ladies to date. For now, let's pass." Okay, that's the end of Act 1, Scene 2. Scene 1. There's a young lady who works in a building in Manhattan, and she happens to go onto another floor where she doesn't know the people there, but for some reason she has to drop something off, and she overhears a young religious lady. She's also a young religious woman, and she hears a young lady who's talking on the phone and saying, "Mom, I understand you want me to go to Monsey, which is a Jewish area in upstate New York, for Shabbos, but I don't have where to stay there." And she's saying those words, and this other lady from downstairs is walking by, and she lives in Monsey. And she sees this nice religious young lady, and she says, "Pardon me, I happened to overhear your conversation. I live in Monsey. You're welcome to come to my house for Shabbos." Very gracious. And she says, "Oh, Mom, someone just walked by and says she'll invite me to her home for Shabbos. It'll be great. So I'll go to the simcha that you want, the family affair that you want me to go to on Shabbos, because I'll be by this young lady's woman." Fine. So she goes. Okay. All right. Act 3, Scene 1. The woman who had the son who was suggested for this young lady, she has a wedding to go to back east, and she goes there. And she was planning on going to the Shever Brachos, the 7-day celebration, but she wasn't feeling well. Instead, she called her cousins and asked that, "I'm not feeling well, can I stay by you for Shabbos? I'm heading back to LA on Sunday. Can I go for you for Shabbos? I'm not feeling great." They said, "Oh, sure, we'd love to have you." Her son, who was learning in yeshiva in New Jersey, heard the mom wasn't feeling well and is in the neighborhood, and is not that far from him. It's it's a trip a little bit, whatever, it's 2-hour trip, but he'll get to see his mom. Calls up the cousins, "Do you mind if I come for Shabbos to spend Shabbos with you and my mom?" And they said, "No, sure, come." And he came to the house, and it's before Shabbos, and they he's excited to see his mom, mom's excited to see him, families together, and the Friday night meal comes, and there's another woman there, and it's a little awkward because in a religious home, having a single guy and a single woman, be at the same Shabbos table, wouldn't to be in the same house for Shabbos is usually not commonly done, and so the mother said to her daughter, like, "Why you have a friend here now?" Says, "Mom, she's somebody at work. I met. I don't really know her well, but she was on the phone. She needed a place. I didn't realize that we're having, the single guy. And it's totally appropriate, separate areas in the house, whatever. There was no issue that way, but just was a little bit uncomfortable." And this young man got to meet that young lady. And who was the young lady? Sprinza from Australia. And guess what? They hit it off and they got married. So the Almighty did a whole plot, a whole plan. Someone suggested the shidduch. They said no. She needed a place to go. The cousin happened to walk by and heard, invited her. The mother didn't have to feel well, so now the son wanted to join her, and that's how Hashem brought the two together. And it was a very beautiful Bashert story about what was meant to be. I hope everyone followed the plot. I'm sorry? Yeah, isn't it? A beautiful story. So, Yosef cries, and especially when he hugs his full brother Binyamin. And our sages tell us, why was he crying? Not only because he missed his brother, but actually for the future, because there's going to be a temple in the land of Israel on the portion belonging to Binyamin, and that's going to be destroyed. So he's crying about that. And there's Mishkan Shiloh, the Mishkan, that the temporary tabernacle that's brought into the section of Yosef, that'll be destroyed. So they're crying about that. Paro welcomes them, and we have to understand that this is Jewish history. The story of the Jews. We're invited to certain countries, and then eventually we're thrown out again. And that's just the reality of life. There was a Rabbi Wein of blessed memory, just passed away recently, a historian, very fascinating person, deep thinker. He wrote some Jewish history books, and he had a yeshiva in Monsey, same area that I told you the other story was about. And they were making the yeshiva, and they were making bookcases, and they went to him and said, we have some very nice bookcases, but if we up the price, we can get a really great, beautiful wood cases that'll last even longer. And he said, who knows how many years we will be able to live in the United States. We don't have to get the top of the line that lasts 300 years. Maybe we won't even be here then. And he said, you have to live in the reality of history. History is that we're welcomed into countries, and we're eventually kicked out of those countries. And, the United States is not, there's a lot of wonderful things. We can have a sign called Jewish Learning Exchange, and we can come to classes openly. We don't have to hide it from the KGB. But there's a lot of things that are not welcomed by us. We still have some security Shabbos morning in front of the shul. But in any event, Pari welcomes them, and Yosef tells the Shvatim to bring Yaakov down to Goshen. Goshen is a section in Egypt that the Jews will live, and they go up to Canaan, and now they have to break it to Yaakov that Yosef is alive. So they're not sure how to do it. So they take Serach bas Asher, Serach, the daughter of Asher, and she could sing beautifully, and she could play a musical instrument, and she comes and plays her harp and says, "Oh, Yosef Chai, Yosef is still alive, and he's a ruler in Mitzrayim." I wasn't there, so I don't know the tune. I'm just making my own tune. But by singing these beautiful words, are you so cold?
That's cold.
Just the imagination.
It's okay. It's okay.
71. Would you like my jacket? I'll give you my jacket. Okay, I mean it. I'm happy to share it with you. Yaakov hears the song, and of course he thinks it's just a made-up song. He doesn't think about it much, but he's very warmed by her words, and he blesses her with longevity. And the Shvatim come in and say, it's true. Yosef is alive, and he is a ruler in Mitzrayim. Now, Yaakov doesn't believe them. And our sages say a liar is not believed even when he says the truth. They lied to him about what had happened. They had brought him a thing about it being eaten up. Different opinions from the commentators whether, in fact, he knew what had happened. But be that as it may, a liar is not believed even when they say the truth. But so they told him the last thing that Yaakov taught him from the Torah, the subject that they learned. And Yaakov was very, that's insider information. No one would know what I taught last discussion we had 20-something odd years ago. Yosef must really still be alive. And there's a deeper commentary on this that says, Yosef is alive, and he's a ruler in Egypt. Great news. But has he maintained his spirituality? Did he hold on to his Judaism? And when they told him the last thing that he learned from his father, then he was comforted. He said, if he's still thinking about what we learned last, that means he's continuing on the tradition of the way it's supposed to be.
Rabbi?
So, yes.
Did Yosef tell the brothers
Tell
what he
Yosef what?
did
Yeah.
Yosef tell the brothers what they learned, or was it because of the?
Yeah, he did. He did.
Huh.
He did tell them. So they should share it with him, and maybe for this reason also to let him know that he had maintained his he had maintained
Is that when he sent the carts also, the agalot? Or is that a
Yes.
different?
Yeah, he sent the carts. I didn't say it, but thank you for reminding me. He sent the wagons up with Yaakov, so that I'm sorry, with the Shvatim, so that Yaakov and the entire family should move down to Egypt because the hunger's still going, and he wants to, and he wants them to move down to the land of Goshen as part of being part of Egypt, and he would take care of them for the food. That won't be a problem. So God appears to Yaakov and says, I will go down with you and bring you out. And this teaches us a very important idea, that God is with us. Imo anochi b'tzara, God is with us even in our difficult times. So yes, the bad news is the Jews are going into exile. They're going into Egypt. But the good news is God is promising them that they will come out. And Yaakov sends Yehuda down first. To do what? Not to open up a kosher pizza store, but rather to open up a yeshiva, a place to learn. And this is interesting because why yeshiva out of all things? Why not a synagogue? And the answer is that the study of Torah is the thing that keeps the Jewish people going. A synagogue you can do anywhere you want. It's not that important. And it's interesting because many synagogues were made by the Reform and Conservative movement, and many of them are shutting their doors because they don't have the numbers, or they're using Zoom, whatever it is, or both. But the place to study, that's an essential component where adults and kids can study and grow and learn. That's a very, very special thing. And that's what Yehuda was went down to do, to make a yeshiva. And Yaakov, after God assures him, Yaakov takes down all of his descendants, and they're going to move down. And it's going to be 70 descendants are going to move down. And Yaakov is coming down, and Yosef goes up to greet him. Yosef comes up to greet him, and it says that when Yaakov saw Yosef, he said, Shema. He said, Hear, O Israel, God is one. That whole prayer of the Shema. The commentaries say, out of all times to say Shema, why are you saying Shema then? And one of the beautiful answers is the opening line is V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha b'chol levav v'chol nafshecha v'chol miyadecha. You should love God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and all of your possessions. What did Yaakov feel at seeing his beloved son Yosef? Tremendous love for him. He missed him. Just as an aside, part of the reason Yaakov was so sad by the loss of his son was obviously it was a beloved son. It was the firstborn from Rachel, and it was a son that his son that they spent a lot of time together. But there was something deeper going on, and that was Yaakov knew that God had told him that if he completes his mission of creating the 12 tribes, that he will outlive all of them. And if one of them die before his time, that means he did not complete his mission. So Yaakov was quite upset when Yosef was dying, what he thought was dead, because he said, I failed in my mission to create the 12 tribes. Now that Yosef is alive, he is tremendously happy and feels tremendous love for him. And what does he do? He wants to transfer that love to love of God. He's saying, now's the time to say the Shema. I can express my love to God because I have a deeper sense of love of my son. And now I can transfer that deeper sense of love of my son to God as well. And it's a powerful idea, loving God with all of your heart, with all of your soul. It's the love that we feel in our relationships with our spouse, with our children, that we can access to say, I need to take that, and it's not mutually exclusive. Obviously, you can love your wife and your husband and your children, but at the same time, you can say, I have a deeper appreciation of what love feels like, and I can take that and use that to love God as well. So Yaakov and Yosef meet, and Yaakov meets Paro, meets the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and Pharaoh asks him, "How are you?" And he says, "I lived a hard life. I lived a difficult life. I had many challenges." And in fact, God takes Yaakov to task for saying that, because he has a lot to be grateful for, and he shouldn't have said that. And God takes away the amount of words that he used to complain. That's where years were taken off of his life, because Yaakov was held to a very high standard, and he should have been very grateful. It's true things weren't easy, but look, you have a family, and you have Yosef is back, and you shouldn't be complaining to Pharaoh, and it cost Yaakov. And Yaakov gives Pharaoh a blessing, and the hunger stops in the merit of Yaakov's blessing. But the Shvatim, the tribes, are all living there, and Yosef is there, and life is going on. They're in Egypt now, and the culmination of the story comes to some end in this case, where Yosef reveals himself to his brothers, and Yaakov is brought down to Egypt, and the entire Jewish people is now living in Egypt, which will eventually lead to the Egyptian exile, and the story will continue, as we will see in later portions. Anybody have any questions? Hanukkah thoughts, Hanukkah questions?
I have a question.
Please.
A couple of questions.
Please.
Was when Joseph is being told by his father to go find his brothers, he meets an angel, right?
That is correct, the Malach Gabriel.
That's a Malach.
Yes.
The Malach tells him go this direction. That's where you find your brother.
Right.
Was that to make sure that this story occurs?
Well, look, to make sure, there's always free choice along the way. Yeah, Yosef could have come to the place, saw the brothers weren't there, and gone back to Dad and said, Dad, they're not there. So the Malach, the angel, was trying to be helpful, and it was one way God could make that the story would come out the way it did. And if Yosef hadn't gone, God would figure out another way.
And then my other question is, when we're thinking about this, I mean, they could have come back from Egypt after 7 weeks. Famine was over. Why did they stay?
Well, it wasn't so simple. You have to understand that Yosef was now second in command, and there wasn't like as we're going to see in next week's portion, Yosef has to have permission to leave and to go and to take his father. It's not so simple. It's not the the United States where you just get on a flight and leave. You know what I'm saying? It was a powerful nation, Egypt, and they couldn't just pack up and leave. Good questions. Anybody else? Thoughts, comments? I'll just share with you a cute thing. I have a boy in my class, one of my 5-year-olds says, Rabbi, why do we have 8 days of Hanukkah? It's actually a very famous question. It's the question known as the Beis Yosef's question. Great halachic authority asks, there was enough oil to burn for 1 day, so the miracle is only for 7 days. So why do we celebrate 8? Everyone get the question? Everyone understand the question? Yeah, but it was gonna last anyway for 1 day. It was enough oil for 1 day for the menorah. You get the question? So this is a very famous question. There are literally probably hundreds of answers on it. So I said, for a pre-1A kid to come, I said, who told you that question? My father. I said, okay, good. You said it over well. That's good. So I told him one answer. I said, one answer is that they found the jug. It's the celebration of one miracle is that they found the jug. All the other jugs were broken open, were tainted, were ritually unclean, and they found one that was still sealed by the seal of the high priest. So that's one answer. There are many other answers as well, but I gave him that one. So there's a beautiful answer that I'll share, I think, from Moshe Feinstein.
There's a possibly might be a myth.
No. I'll tell you something funny. In the Purim story, which we're not getting into now, the professors in the valley told the class, well, the Purim story is really just a myth. It didn't really happen. And the student who was in the class is from the city of Hamadan.
Yeah.
What's Hamadan?
Hamadan is where they have what do you call it? Mordechai and Esther, they're buried.
Mordechai and Esther are buried there, and he came from that city. And I said, you didn't say anything. I was afraid I was going to fail the class. I said, shame on you. You should have gotten up and said, I'm from Hamadan, and Mordechai and Esther are buried there. And even the Arabs, the Persians would go there to pray there at that place. So no, it's not a myth. It's a beautiful, miraculous story for the Jewish people for eternity. All right. Any other? I started telling Rabbi Moshe Feinstein's answer, which I think is a thought-provoking answer. He says the miracle is the 7 days that the one jar of oil burned for more than 1 day, but rather for 8 days. But there's another miracle, the miracle of nature, that oil burns. Oil burns. That's helpful to us. Nature is on one hand hides God because it looks like it's natural progression, but there's a beauty in that because we're able to structure our lives. You can cook with oil, you know what I'm saying? Fry with oil, you can do things with it. So Rav Moshe says that one of the days we light the menorah is just to remind us that we're grateful to God that He gave us a thing called oil that can burn. This is a sweet answer. All right. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? All right. Have a great, Diana, have a great
Thank you.
Great Hanukkah. Everybody else, a great Hanukkah.
We already live here in Israel.
Enjoy. What? Michelle, enjoy. Take care. All the best.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Good
Happy
Hanukkah, Rabbi, and Rosh
Happy Hanukkah,
Chodesh.
good Chodesh. Take care.
Rosh Chodesh.
Good love.
Have a
Take
blessed
care.
one.
Bye-bye.